طيب أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الخلق أجمعين سيدنا محمد عليه وعلى آله وصحبه أفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم. اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا فعلمنا ولا فهم لنا إلا ما فهمتنا ففهمنا يا رب العالمين وبعد. Okay, so inshallah today is the fifth halaqah, I think it's the fifth session. We finished the first part of the class on Aqidah over 4 weeks. It was supposed to be 3 weeks as we said last time, and then we had to have one more session to finish that part. And then today inshallah we're starting the second part of the book, which is the fiqh part. Which is not all the fiqh, of course. We will talk about the fiqh of acts of worship specifically, because the whole class is about the foundations of Islam. And the foundations of Islam that we are required to learn in fiqh is whatever is related to the acts of worship. Whatever is related to our tahara, our prayers, our fasting, Ramadan is just coming, and our zakah and our hajj. So last time I said you need to watch the halaqas of the last course about the introduction to fiqh. So how many people did that? Okay, how many ones from the brothers first? 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, how many sisters? About 5, right? 6. Okay. So I promised you last time that if you didn't watch this, you will be lost. So inshallah, you'll be lost today. Because, okay, can we get everybody seated, please? Everybody seated, no side conversations, no chatting. Jazakumullah khair. So the introduction is really essential. And I wasn't joking when I said you're going to be lost, because there are a lot of terms that you need to know. First of all, this book is written according to the madhab of Imam al-Shafi'i. So you need to know who is a Shafi'i, you need to know what does it mean to be madhab, and you need to know what are the rest of the madhab, and you need to know what's the concept of differences of opinions, and you need to know how can I follow different opinions from different schools, and how can I apply this on my daily life things. And we cannot cover all of this today, because that is going to take a lot of time, and that's not part of the course, because this course is based on the course that is before. So if you're confused about one of these things, try to write them down. You can address me personally and ask me these questions after the class. But you cannot ask these questions in the class. So today we're going to talk about the fiqh right away. We will get into the details of the ahkam right away. And the people who watched the lecture, or the people who attended the last class, I think they will be ready enough to put these things in the right place. Right? So the first course, we were setting the frame that you can put and install all this ma'lumat, all this information in. So if you've watched this halaqah of fiqh, you know how to store this information I'm going to talk about today. Fiqh is very vast. It's very big. There are a lot of details. There are a lot of different scenarios. There are a lot of things that are very related to each other. It's intersected with a lot of things that we do in life. So every single scenario we're going to describe and talk about, you need to put it in the right place in your mind. This is what I meant by the introduction to fiqh. So again, it is not really still too late. If you feel confused today, you will still need to watch this again. If you're not going to watch it, it's up to you, but you really are not going to benefit enough. So just we need to be very clear on this, that you need to understand all these different terms before studying the ilm of fiqh in general. That's why today we need to talk about the topic right away, inshallah. So the first thing he taught about was the purification, the tahara. So again, we're assuming that we know the terms of the 5 different rulings, al-wajib, al-haram, al-mandub, al-makruh, and all these different terms. We know them already. We know something that is called the rukn, which is a pillar, which is integral, which is essential, and something that is called a shart, which is a condition. And we need to know the differences between something to be essential that you have to do, and between something that you are just recommended to do. So when we talk about wudu, for example, and then we say those are the 6 integrals or the 6 foundations of wudu, there's something different than the etiquettes or the adab or the recommended sunnah of the wudu. And knowing these definitions is part of the introduction, inshallah. When we talk about any ibadah, we start with the integrals, the foundations of this ibadah, the arkan. All these terms are the same. The integrals, the foundations, or the pillars. And there is a difference between the pillar of something and the condition of something. So each ibadah has certain number of pillars and certain number of conditions. So what is the difference between a condition and a pillar of something? Yes.
pillar is like the base of something, or العمود بالعربي. It's like what holds things up. A condition is condition, shart, in order for something to happen. That's the difference.
Okay, is there anything common between both?
Yeah, sometimes things doesn't work without both.
Sometimes?
Most of the time. Yeah, all the time.
All the time.
Oh, well, conditions can have exceptions, but pillars, no, you can't.
No, we're talking about conditions in fiqh, in the topic that we're talking about, not in general. So let's give an example. So when we talk about prayer, there are pillars of the prayer and there are conditions for the prayer. What is the difference?
Wudu is a condition.
What?
Wudu.
Wudu is a condition for the prayer to be valid. Okay, that's an example for a condition for the prayer. What is an example for the pillar of the prayer? Takbirat al-ihram or al-Fatiha, reciting Surah al-Fatiha. So what is in common between these two different examples, and what is the difference between having wudu before prayer and between reciting al-Fatiha in your prayer? This is a practical example of knowing the difference between the shart and rukn, pillar and a condition. So what is in common between these two things?
Let's say if I pray the Dhuhr, then can ask, and if my wudu is still valid, so I can pray.
Okay. This is the difference, or this is the common between them? Again, the question is, what is in common between reciting al-Fatiha in a prayer and having wudu before prayer? Yes?
If either of them does not exist, then the action is not valid anymore.
Okay, so the thing in common is they both are required for the action to be valid. Okay, what is the difference? That's the comment, that's correct. But what is the difference? Yes?
Wudu is not a pillar for salat.
Wudu is not?
A pillar in salat.
So it is not part of the ibadah itself. It is something that prerequisite. Exactly. So a condition is something that is most likely it's a prerequisite for the thing to happen or to be correct. But a pillar is something that is part of the essence of the ibadah itself. Facing the qibla, condition or a pillar? Or a pillar?
Condition. It's a condition.
Condition? Why?
If you're not facing the qibla, your prayers.
That's correct, but why didn't we count it as a pillar?
It's not in the essence of the salat. It's not in the essence of actually the actions of the salat.
Okay, so whoever viewed facing the qibla in this way, they said yes, as you said, it's only a condition, it's not a pillar. Because it's a prerequisite, it is not really literally part of the essence of the prayer. It is something that you need to make sure before your salah, you're facing that way, but it is not technically 100% part of the actions. You can consider it as a pillar, there's no problem. Because both are essential, both, you have to do them both. If you lose a condition, your prayer is not valid. If you lose a rukn, a pillar, your prayer is not valid too. Yes.
So pillar is a solid thing you have to do. Condition is how you do that.
Very close, but not necessarily, because there might be some exceptions for this. So again, the general meaning is condition is a prerequisite, pillar is part of the essence of the prayer. There are some confusing examples, like the example of facing the qibla, they might be a little bit confusing. But in general, so having tahara is a condition. Making sure the place you're praying in is tahir is a condition. Facing the qibla is a condition. But takbiratul ihram, saying Allahu Akbar at the beginning, that's a pillar. Reciting Surah Al-Fatiha, that's a pillar, and so on. So this is an example of these terms that we will use a lot in the fiqh part of the book, inshallah. Before we start reading, so hopefully all the questions will be at the end, because we're going to have a lot of questions. So let's keep all the questions at the end, because maybe some of the questions I will be addressing, so you don't need to ask them. Or if something that I missed, you can just write them down, and we can have enough time for the questions at the end, inshallah. Any fiqh book usually begins with tahara. 99% of the fiqh books, it starts with tahara, with purification. When we say the word purification, we have two different meanings for the word purification in Islam. We have the physical purification, which we are discussing here, and we have the spiritual purification, which we discuss in spirituality, which is the third part of this course. When we say physical purification, we talk about wudu, we talk about najasa, we talk about ghusl, all these different things. Because there are physical things that we have to practice for our ibadah to be correct. But then when I tell you, you need to make sure your heart is clean and your heart is pure from envy, from hatred, from impatience, from loving this dunya too much, from all these different things, that's a spiritual purification. right? It's not like a tangible thing. It's not something that is really materialistic that you are dealing with. It is something spiritual that you need to purify your heart from. We use this word in these two senses. The sense of physical tahara and the sense of the spiritual tahara. In fiqh, we're talking about the physical tahara. Talking about how to physically purify yourself the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described to be able to pray. Why do they start the fiqh books with tahara? Because the first thing the Muslim gets busy with on a daily basis is the ibadah. This is the most repetitive thing that you do in your life. The rest of the fiqh are things that you do like every now and then, like on and off. You do not necessarily do financial transactions every single day. You do not necessarily having marital issues every single day, right? All these different chapters the fiqh is dealing with, and if you watch the first halaqah, you will the halaqah from the last class, you will see the different chapters of fiqh, the different issues the fiqh is dealing with. The first one is the acts of worship, and then there is the financial transactions, then there is the family law, then there is the judiciary system, then there are a lot of other, the political system, all these things the fiqh deals with. The most important thing that you deal with on a daily basis is your ibadah, because you pray 5 times a day. And you are most likely to fast a lot of times in your life. If you add the recommended fasting. You are entitled to deal with money in terms of the zakah and the donations. You are entitled to perform umrah and hajj once in your life. Those are the closest things to your practice, to your religious practice. So they start their ibadah, they start their fiqh books with the ibadah. And the first ibadah, because it's imaduddin, as the Prophet ﷺ said, it's the pillar of this religion, is salah. He said that's the fine line between you and a non-Muslim. The main definition of a Muslim, that puts the difference between a Muslim and a non-Muslim is the performance of your prayer. So they started with the prayer. And then the most important thing you need for your prayer to be valid is your tahara. That's why they start with tahara. So you understand, why do they start by acts of worship? Then prayer comes first, and then the main condition for the validity of the prayer is the tahara. So that's why they start with the tahara. So that's the logic behind beginning the books of fiqh with the tahara. So the first part of fiqh in general, again, is the 5 pillars of Islam. Bunya al-Islamu ala khams. The Islam is founded on 5 pillars. And the first one after the shahada, which is related to the aqidah that we discussed, will be the salah. And then the rest of the other 4, which the author here mentioned. And we need tahara for this. And then more importantly, which is not here in this book, 99% of the fiqh books, they will start the chapter of tahara with talking about water. Because the main substance that you would use to purify yourself is the ma, the water. So you need to understand what is water, and what is the difference between a clean water or not. And what if I use water once? That means it's still tahir, it's still pure or not. I used water, what is the hukm? Water that is altered with something tahir, with something pure. Water that is altered with something that is impure. Water that is too much in quantity, and then the little thing that falls in that water, is it still pure or not? Or a small quantity, and then there is something that falls in this water as a najasa or impurity. Does it count to be pure water or not? You study all these things, and then you study wudu. Because the thing that you will need to use in your wudu is the water. But if you do not know which water you can use in your wudu, you cannot do the wudu properly. And you cannot do the bathing or the showering properly if you need to do that as the obligatory bathing. So that's why they start with water. Because that's a very small matan and a very small booklet, and these topics, he skipped the water thing. Because he just wants to address the main issues. This book is really, really abridged. It's very summarized. He's just picking the main issues that we deal with on a daily basis. We might add some ahkam sometimes to make it more clear, but for example, he just started with the wudu right away. The first thing he started with, fara'idul wudu, the integrals of wudu, or the obligatory actions of ablution or wudu. So again, he skipped the part that you will find in a little bit more advanced books or a little bit bigger fiqhi books. The translator added a small, nice paragraph before tahara talking about the definition of tahara. Said the Arabic word for purification is tahara. Its linguistic meaning is to clean and to remove dirtiness. Whether that dirtiness is physical or moral is the concept that we just talked about, the spirituality and the fiqhi purification. And he talked about that Islam requires you to be pure from both. And here in this fiqhi part of the book, we're talking about the purification that you need to have for your ibadah and for your salah specifically to be valid. Okay, al-wudu, that's the first thing. Ablution or wudu. And he started saying, فَصْلٌ فُرُوضُ الْوُضُوءِ سِتَّةٌ. The obligatory actions of ablution or wudu are 6. So what is wudu? You need to define it. So there's something that he skipped to. He didn't define us what is wudu. He just went ahead and he talked about the integrals or the foundations of wudu right away. But when you discuss or you define, wudu, you can have multiple definitions, but you need to have a very clear-cut definition that would exactly describe what you do in your wudu. They say غسل أعضاء مخصوصة بنية العبادة. Washing certain parts of the body with the intention of worship. That's a definition of wudu. And when we study the art of logic, we understand how to make definitions. Because definitions are something that is really essential and important. And it's needed in every single thing you do in your life. That's why logic is important, because definitions are based on logic. Because you have a lot of conditions that you need to fulfill to make a definition. Big part of these conditions is you make sure that the definition you make includes every single thing related to the thing you are defining. And you make sure that this definition excludes every single thing that you do not need to define. Right? So when he said, when we say about wudu, washing certain parts of the body with the intention of worship. If you remove one part of this definition, it's not going to be complete. Right? If you say washing certain parts of the body, that's not a complete definition, because I might wash that just because I just need to clean my body. I just need to clean my arms. I just need to clean my face. If intention is not there, that's why intention is the first integral. If the intention is not there, that's not an ibadah. So you have to add this part in your definition. Right? And they have this beautiful rule about definitions. They say the more you add words to a definition, the more restricted the thing defined will be. Right? That's why the longer the definition is, the restricted the meaning is. Because every single word excludes things. Right? You will say washing, you can wash everything. Certain body parts. You made it very limited to washing certain body parts, and you excluded every single thing else. And you excluded the shower, because shower you wash the whole body. So it's not included in this definition. With the intention of worship, now you excluded whatever, any other reason or habitual activity that you would do to clean your body. This is the way we deal with the definitions. So the first thing is the niyyah, the intention, the first pillar of wudu. There is one ayah in the Quran in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes in detail the integrals or the foundations of wudu. Who knows this ayah? What is the ayah that Allah is talking about wudu in terms of the ahkam, in terms of the rulings and the pillars of wudu? It's in English here in the first paragraph of the intention. يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا قمتم إلى الصلاة فاغسلوا وجوهكم وأيديكم إلى المرافق. It's at the beginning of page 13. When, oh you have believed, when you rise up for prayer, wash your faces and your hands up to the elbows. وامسحوا برؤوسكم وأرجلكم إلى الكعبين. And lightly rub your heads and wash your feet up to the ankles. This is the ayah in Surah Al-Ma'idah in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explaining the obligations of wudu. These obligations you have to fulfill. If you miss one of them, your wudu is invalid. Subsequently, your prayer will be invalid as well. The first thing is intention, which is part of every single ibadah you do in your life. That's why intention is so important. Every single act of worship, for the rest of the acts of worship chapter in fiqh, you need intention. Without intention, if you do the other 5 pillars without intention, your ibadah doesn't count. Because intention is the main part that the ibadah is actually established on. The Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Actions are according to the intentions. This is one of the most important hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. A lot of scholars, when they compile the hadith collections, the first hadith they would introduce their books with would be إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Some scholars said it's the third of this religion. Some scholars said it's the quarter of this religion. Because it encompasses all this concept of making your actions valid, and encompasses the concept of sincerity to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The scholars said this part, this hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, it's related to 70 different topics in fiqh. 70 different topics in fiqh. Topics means like each topic like a full chapter, not just on one issue. It's a full chapter that is based on this. 70 different topics in fiqh, they are related to the intention. That's why understanding this hadith, and it's the first hadith in the 40 hadith of Imam Nawawi rahimahullah. When he compiled the hadith, he said at the introduction, this hadith, all Islam is about this 40 hadith. The first one he introduced his book with was the hadith of the niyyah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Okay, what is the meaning of an intention? When you want to intend to do something. when you want to intend that I'm making wudu, what do you imagine when you think of the niyyah? How can you know if you had a niyyah or not?
It's a conscious effort.
It's a conscious effort. Okay. It's a thought. Okay. It's a conscious effort or a thought of what? Of the action you're doing, right? Okay. Is it a certain way that you have to perform it? Or just simply it's that you are aware of what you're doing? What?
It depends on what you have in mind.
So now I wanted to make wudu, right? I know the water is just in front of me. I want to make wudu. What do I have to do to have my intention ready? Now we're counting 6 pillars of wudu. You have intention. Okay, what should I do?
I think it's in your heart, like for you to like just think of it and you're going towards it. Like I wouldn't. There is nothing to do. Like you just do the actions. It's the next step.
You say Bismillah and start. So is it just that you are conscious of the thing you're doing? Which means, okay, the literal meaning of intention is al-qasd. Niyya in the Arabic language means al-qasd. You are purposely doing something. Is the meaning of niyyah. When you're making wudu, you're purposely making wudu. Right? You know, some people have this sleepwalk problem, right? So, right? Don't point out to anybody. So when you wake up sometimes and you just walk and you sleep and then you open the tap and just start making wudu or you start washing your face, whatever you're doing, right? You have to take a shower. There's something that we're gonna study that you have to take a shower. Sometimes you get in the water, for example, or you open the water, for example, and you start and you're not really conscious of what you're doing. You didn't have that thought that, okay, I did something that in a state that I will have to make shower to be pure, to be able to pray. You didn't think about this, right? That might happen a lot, right? Somebody's swimming and he came out from the pool, from where he was swimming, and they said, okay, I need to pray. I didn't make wudu. Can he just pray? He can't? Why? Because he didn't have the intention. He was just swimming. He didn't have the intention to make wudu, right? So that's why intention means al-qasd. Qasd means you are purposely doing something. And that's why it is so important, all of your actions and all of your acts of worship. Okay, what is the reason? What is the wisdom behind intention? Why intention is that important in fiqh and that important in Islam? Intention has two main goals in Islam. Number one, you decide on what you are doing. So you are differentiating between an ibadah and another ibadah. What is the only thing that would make Dhuhr prayer different from Asr prayer? They're exactly typical, except of the intention. It doesn't have to be the time because you might be combining them. You cannot trick me. Right? Or you're making them up. So you pray in Dhuhr and Asr Jama'ah. I'm sure Brother Abdul Malik doesn't really feel bad. So you combine it between them. The only thing that would differentiate between Dhuhr and Asr is your intention. Because both are the same thing, right? They are secret recitation prayers, 4 rak'ahs, all the same pillars, same sunnah, everything. The only thing is the intention. So that's the first reason. You differentiate between the ibadah and another. Right? Second purpose or wisdom behind the intention, you differentiate between an ibadah and a habitual thing you do in your life. This doesn't happen a lot in wudu, but it happens a lot with showering, for example. You're taking a shower because just like you want to take a shower, or you're taking a shower because it's an obligatory shower that you have to take. They both are the same actions, but the only thing that differentiates between both is your intention, which is now I'm taking a bath, I'm taking a shower because I have to take a shower. That's the only thing that would differentiate between them. So this is the maqsood of niyyah, the purpose behind the niyyah. And then the other point, all these issues are related to the niyyah. The other point is, when do I have to perform the niyyah? Why at the beginning of the action? Before, it's not a niyyah. If you're sitting now, I said, inshallah, I'm going to pray Asr in 5 minutes. That's not a niyyah. That's a decision. That's a azm, we call it in Arabic. Azamt. You determine to pray Asr in 5 minutes, in 10 minutes. That's not a niyyah. Niyyah happens when you are saying Allahu Akbar and you're praying. That's the niyyah. If you're not conscious of your prayer when you're saying Allahu Akbar, same time, so there's a problem with your niyyah. Before doesn't count. So if you had a decision before the action, and then you didn't have the niyyah at the time of the action itself, this doesn't count as a niyyah. فَمَحَلُّهَا أَوَّلُ الْعَمَلِ or وَقْتُهَا أَوَّلُ الْعَمَلِ. Its time is at the beginning of the action, at the same beginning of the action. Then the last point, okay, how can I perform the niyyah? مَحَلُّ niyyah, how can I perform that? It's in your heart. You are conscious of what you're doing. It's a thought in your mind or in your heart. Okay, can I utter or say the niyyah out loud by like in kalam, in my speech? If you want to do that, you can do that. There's no problem. But it's not a condition, and it's not actually the main thing you have to do. The main thing you have to do is it's in your heart. Okay, but some people, they want to say it just to feel it more. I want to say nawaitu salat al-dhuhr. I intend to pray dhuhr prayer. I intend to make wudu. It's okay. But the main like required condition or required pillar is you are conscious in your heart. You're conscious basically of what you're doing. Some people like to say it out loud so they actually feel more present when they're doing the actions. There's no problem. But the main point is you have it in your heart. Okay, when I'm making a niyyah for wudu, which niyyah should I have? He mentioned here in that paragraph under the first one, which is the intention, like 5 different types of niyyah that you can make, which is telling you like whatever would express about the action that you are doing. He says your intention can be one of the following: left in the state of ritual impurity. That could be your intention when you're making wudu. Maybe it's rendering permissible something that cannot be performed without purification. استباحة مفتقر إلى الوضوء. You want to be able to pray, basically. That's your intention. Or, for example, you can intend the obligatory act of ablution. نويت فرض الوضوء. That counts as a niyyah. Or ablution itself. نويت الوضوء. That's a niyyah. Whatever thought that comes to your mind related to the wudu and what you are doing, basically. Or obtaining purification from being in a state of ritual impurity. All these different things, they count as niyyah. Whatever thought comes to your mind. But it has to be related to the thing you are doing. This is what he's trying to tell you. Then he talked about mahallu niyyah, as we said. Intention itself is an action of the heart. You do not have to utter your intention, but you can if it makes it easier to formulate it in your heart. This is the concept of in al-qalb and uttering it by tongue. This is the first pillar. Then the second one, we wash our face. Did he miss anything that we do in wudu? Did he miss anything? He said intention, washing the face. What did he miss? Yadayn. What else? Rinsing water and rinsing the mouth with water and rinsing the nose, right? Why didn't he count these things? Because we're counting only the pillars. That's not all the wudu that we perform, but we're counting the pillars, the things that you cannot miss. Everything else, if you miss, that's fine. I mean, you lose thawab, you lose the reward, but your wudu is okay and your prayer is okay. And you need to understand this concept because every single chapter you study in fiqh is going to be like this. These study things separately. Because you're going to be confused if he just explains all things together, because you will be very confused. No, he tells you first, usually, the pillars, and then if there are conditions that he would list them sometimes before the pillars, then he would tell you the recommended things, and then the unrecommended things, and then the things that you cannot do because they invalidate your ibadah. This is basically the sequence of a lot of acts of worship chapters in fiqh. So the second one is ghaslul wajhi. The second is washing the face. And then he described what are the boundaries of a face. He said its boundaries are from the hairline to the bottom of the jaw and chin, lengthwise. And from ear to ear, widthwise. So from here to here, from ear to ear. These are the boundaries of face. This is the minimum that you have to wash. You can go beyond that, that's fine, and you get more thawab when you do this. You actually highly recommended to do this. But again, we're counting the minimum that if you go less than this, your wudu is invalid. Okay, so again, it's the widthwise or the lengthwise is from the hairline, normally, not necessarily some people, and till the chin. And from ear to ear. Nobody gets offended. That makes all of us. I mean, both of us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, wash your faces. إِذَا قُمْتُمْ إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ فَاغْسِلُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ. Right? And then he didn't mention the niyyah because it's already kind of implied when he said, إِذَا قُمْتُمْ إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ. When you rise up to pray, when you decide, when you intend to pray. So we understood that niyyah is important, and we understood it from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. فَاغْسِلُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ. Wash your faces. That's the first one. The second one, غَسْلُ الْيَدَيْنِ, or the third one, غَسْلُ الْيَدَيْنِ إِلَى الْمِرْفَقَيْنِ. The third is washing the arms up to and including the elbows. And be very aware of the word including. It's not up to the elbows, it's included. So you go above the elbows a little bit. And the word ila in Arabic language, ila al-marafiq, up to means including the elbows. And that's a consensus. All the sakaras, and this is the only way the Prophet ﷺ performed the wudu. That the elbows are actually included in this. And then number 4, مسح شيء من بشرة الرأس أو شعر في حده. The fourth is wiping part of the scalp or hair within its boundaries. So he didn't only mention the hair to save some people like me, right? Because you talked about the head. The ayah says, فَامْسَحُوا وَامْسَحُوا بِرُؤُوسِكُمْ. You always get confused about this. The ayah didn't say wipe over your hair. The ayah said wipe over your head. Does it make a difference? It does make a big difference, right? To some people. That means, if there is a hair, of course, you can wipe over it. But that means if there is hair that is not part, or that is not actually in the boundaries of the head, as he said, you cannot wipe over it. So for a sister, for example, can she wipe over the hair that is here? That comes on the shoulders, or comes beyond, like at the end of the head from behind? No. It has to be within the boundaries of the head. This is the meaning of the boundaries within the boundaries of the head. It's not about the hair. It's about your head. Most likely the hair that would be touched, that would be wiped over, but it has to be within the area of your head. That's why the ayah didn't say the hair. The ayah said the ra's. وَامْسَحُوا بِرُؤُوسِكُمْ, and wipe over your heads. Okay, which part of my head that I have to wipe? According to this school of thought, according to the Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah, any part counts. Small or big, it doesn't matter. If you just do like this, you did your part. We're gonna understand in the sunnah that you have to do the whole thing. That's a sunnah, of course. But again, we're talking about the pillar. Any part of your head will count, even if the smallest part. As long as you are within the boundaries of your head, that's okay. Right? If somebody's wearing a hat, sister is wearing hijab, and she doesn't want to take it off, for example, and she just wants to put her, even one finger that is wet already, there's some water on the finger, inside, and just does like that, that's okay. That's not a consensus, because other madhahib, other schools of thought, they actually say, no, you have to do over than this. Some said third of your head, some have said it's an obligatory, you do the whole thing. You go all the way back and then come to the front, which is a sunnah according to all of them, but they disagreed, is it a fard or not? Is it an obligatory or not? According to this school of thought, again, Imam Shafi'i said, no, small part is enough, and then you are highly recommended to do the whole thing. What is their dalil? They said the Prophet ﷺ, once he had his turban on, and then he put his hand, he just slid it over a little bit to the back, and he wiped that part. And then he completed wiping over the turban itself. So they said if it wasn't obligatory to wipe over all the head, he would have to take the turban off, but he didn't. That's why the sunnah, if you don't want to take off your hat or your hijab, you do this, and then without really like putting a lot of water on your head, you can wipe over all the whole thing, even on your hijab or turban or hat or whatever. Because this is also part of the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then the fifth one is غسل الرجلين مع الكعبين, is washing the feet with the ankles. وامسحوا برؤوسكم وأرجلكم إلى الكعبين. وأرجلكم, that's not a عطف, it's not connected to the word before. It's connected to the hands, the arms, and the face. That's why in i'rab and syntax is different. وامسحوا برؤوسكم, and then وأرجلكم, it's a fatha, because it's a عطف on the first one. And wash your feet up to ila, the ankles. And we said ila means including the ankles. So the ankles actually are included here too, in washing the feet. Then the sixth and the last pillar of wudu is الترتيب على هذه الكيفية. The sixth is ordering them in the above manner. Okay, this sixth pillar is not mentioned in the ayah. How did they get it? What?
Oh, from the Arabic language. It's a way that's...
From Arabic language. Okay. Yes. How did they get it from the Sunnah?
I mean, like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was responsible for like all of humanity. So if you make wudu a certain the same way, like the water is for Arab, because Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam was praying for Arab water. I guess the tartib of wudu is the same because that's the way the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam made wudu.
Mm-hmm. Good. Any other thoughts? Yes. Yeah, but how does the ayah imply that it's an obligatory thing? Because the scholars mentioned two different reasons. They mentioned a shari'i reason and a logical reason. So shari'i, as you said, it's in the sunnah. The Prophet never changed this order before. He never changed that. Every single hadith, and we have a lot of hadith about wudu, he never changed this. And they also said it's implied by one of his hadith when he said, "Ibda'u bima bada Allahu bih." Begin with whatever Allah begins with, which implies that tartib is a fard. The order is an obligatory thing. That's from like a shari'i reason, and it's enough, of course. But they said there is a beautiful, rational wisdom that is implied in the ayah itself. Exactly. If you notice, the four things that are mentioned in the ayah: washing your face, washing your arms, wiping over your head, and then washing your feet. Right? Said, why would he mention something to be wiped in the middle of things to be washed? Things to be washed are three, and then things to be wiped is just one, and he puts it in the middle. They said in Arabic language, you do not actually separate between similar things except for a reason. The reason here is that tartib is obligatory. العرب لا تفرق بين النظائر. That's a rule. إلا لسبب. They do not differentiate. They do not separate between things that are similar except for a reason. And the reason here that and this concept was supported by the Sunnah, of course, that the tartib, the order of these things, is actually something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to do. There are some other things that we need to know about wudu that he didn't mention here. Number one, you have to go a little bit over and beyond the part that you are required to wash. It's highly recommended to go above it, and sometimes it's a kind of obligatory to do that if you're not sure if you fulfill the whole part or not. If you're not sure that you got this part just before your ears, make sure you go over a little bit. If you're not sure about the line that you should start washing your face as boundaries lengthwise, go a little bit above this. If you're not sure that your elbows were actually well washed, make sure you go above this. And the reward behind this is huge. The hadith that is talking about the reward of wudu, subhanAllah, there is very interesting. The Prophet ﷺ said in one of them that the main thing that distinguishes Muslims on the Day of Judgment is the wudu. Because people who used to make wudu properly, they would be shining out of light on the Day of Judgment. In one of these versions, he mentioned specifically those who wash properly their faces and their feet. And he likened them to the example of one of the very beautiful types of horses. Some of the horses have a small white part in their heads, like very white part and hair, and very white part in their legs and their feet. And the Arabs used to love that type of horse so much. And he said, "Inna ummati yud'awna yawm al-qiyamati ghurran muhajjalina min athari al-wudu." So my ummah will be called on the Day of Judgment, and they are having these two different descriptions of the horses, that their heads are actually shining out of light and their feet are shining out of light. This is the meaning of ghurran muhajjalin. Ghurra bayadun fi wajhi al-faras. It's a very shining whiteness that usually happens or comes in the head of the horse. And the same about the feet. So he said, فَمَنِ اسْتَطَاعَ مِنْكُمْ أَنْ يُطِيلَ غُرَّتَهُ فَلْيَفْعَلْ. If you're able to go above the part that you have to wash, you have to make sure that you do this. Number two, this is a very important tip. You need to make sure that you're using water. You're pouring water on your parts. You're not just wiping. If your hands are wet, only wet, and you do like this, that's not washing. That's wiping. And the ayah differentiated between washing and wiping. So when I'm doing the face, when I'm doing the arms, when I'm doing the feet, I have to make sure that I'm carrying already water in my hands and pouring them on my face and my feet and my arms. You see what I'm saying? But wiping doesn't count. If your clothes are wet, for example, or you have like whatever, anything that is wet, and you put it on your face, this doesn't count as wudu. Right? Even if it left already some traces of water, that's not wudu. Because wudu is washing. So you already put in water. Sayalanul ma. You have to make sure the water actually is going above your parts. The only thing that is exempted is the head. That's why if your hands are wet, you do not have to carry water and put it on your head. You just wipe over the head. So that's one of the important points too. Another important point, there is a difference in Arabic between kaf and yad. The palms and the arms. Those are the palms, right? And then the whole thing until the elbows, or up to the elbows, are the arms. There's a difference between both. Why? When we are going to count the recommended things of wudu, the first thing you do, so you have the intention, you say Bismillah, and then you wash your palms. Right? That's a sunnah. Right? Washing the palms at the beginning. غسل اليدين. They say yadayn, sometimes they say kaffayn. So when you're washing your palms of your hands 3 times at the beginning, you still haven't started your actual wudu yet. And then you do your face. And then you do your arms. When you do your arms as part of the pillars, do you wash your palms again or not? You do them again? I mean, do you have to do them again? Yes or no? Why no? Because you already did them? That's why I said there's a difference between palms and arms. When you see an arm in language, palms are included. From the beginning of the fingers, palms are included. If they are linguistically included, that means you have to do them again. Make sure these small differences, they might really invalidate your ibadah. So you really need to take that serious. Right? The palms of your hands are included in your arms. Even if you wash them before, they're still wet, there's still water, it doesn't matter. That was a sunnah. Now you're doing the fard. And the pillar, you have to wash these palms with your arms. Okay? So the palms of the hands, please can you just let's have one conversation, please. So the palms of the hands are included in the arms. When you do the pillar again, when you do the fard of ghasl al-yadayn one more time, you're not actually doing it, technically you're not doing it one more time. You're still doing the fard, the obligatory, which is washing the arms. Another important point, some people have very long nails, right? Sometimes those nails wouldn't actually let the water touch this part. You see those parts, like the very top of your fingers? If your nails are very long, sometimes the water wouldn't touch that. Right? Even if they're clean, of course. I mean, if they're not clean, that's a bigger problem. But if they're clean, sometimes if you just doing it quick, you didn't make sure that the water goes there, and that's a problem. Now we're not talking about nails or what's the sunnah about nails. That's a different story. But we're talking about making sure water reaches every single part of the part you are washing in wudu. When the ayah tells you, wash your arms, make sure all the arm is washed. If you leave one little spot without washing, that's your problem. That invalidates your ibadah. We're not talking about sometimes you forget, sometimes you didn't notice, that's a different. But you have to take all the means to make sure you are actually washing your part properly. So those very long nails, that causes a lot of problems with people, that they do not make sure the water reach there. Sometimes people who are wearing rings or watches and they are making wudu, do they have to move the ring or move the watch or take off the watch or not? Do they have to do that?
Well, they have to make sure the water touches the skin.
What?
You have to make sure the water touches the skin.
Exactly. You have to make sure the water touches the skin. If that can happen while you're still wearing it, it's okay. Sometimes the ring is a little bit like big or wider, and then the water will automatically goes like below it, and you don't have to move it. For example, or below the watch. It's okay. But if you know that the water will never go there unless you move it, you have to move it. Move it, take it off, do whatever you want. But you have, the rule is, make sure water reaches everywhere. So this is one of the things that we all face and deal with. The other big problem for sisters is the nail polish. Right? And if you have a nail polish and you need to make wudu, do you have to take it off or not? Right? And this is one of the main problems. The general hukm is that, yes, you cannot have wudu on the nail polish. So you have to remove it before making wudu, and then you make wudu. That's the general ruling on this. Okay, the Shaykh includes, one second, sorry. The Shaykh includes the ghusl, taking the bath, the obligatory bath, with the wudu before completing the rest of the rulings of wudu. So he would now talk about the bath, taking a bath, taking an obligatory bath, and then he would go back talking about things that invalidate your wudu. So we're gonna go with his order. Normally, we finish the whole thing about wudu first, and then we move to that chapter of ghusl or that chapter of the bath. But here he mixes them up because it's very summarized together. So he said, وإن كان عليه جنابة من مجامعة أو خروج مني بنوم أو غيره لزمه غسل جميع بدنه مع نية رفع الجنابة. There are 6 things that require a bath. If one of them happens, a person has to take a shower in a certain way. Again, there are 6 things. He didn't count the 6, but they are counted in the explanation. So we'll read the matan first, and then we'll read the explanation. He said, if one has sexual impurity due to intercourse. Number 2, the release of fluid typically associated with orgasm while asleep, or something else. Then he must wash his entire body. So he mentioned 2 things, and then he said, or something else, and we will count these things. The first one is clear. If any sexual impurity that happens between a wife and husband, as the Prophet ﷺ said. In the second one, when it happens, the release of fluid, typically associated with orgasm, as the Prophet ﷺ said, water is from water. Al-ma'u min al-ma'. He told the Sahaba that water is from water. When there is water, which is basically the sexual fluid, that means you are obliged to take a bath or to take a shower. Also, one Sahabiya, one female companion, Sulaym, she came to the Prophet ﷺ, and she said, Ya Rasulullah, O Messenger of Allah, verily Allah is not shy of the truth. And that was a sign of her adab before asking the question that is a little bit awkward to the Prophet ﷺ. Then she said, must a woman take a bath after she had a sexual dream? And he said, ﷺ, yes, if she notices discharge, which is the wet dream. So this release of fluid, sexual fluid, whether it happens when a person is awake or when a person is asleep, a wet dream or actually something during the day, that would count as one of the requirements of ghusl. So he mentioned two main things, and then he said, or something else, and then the translator added actually the rest of them. So he said, such as an orgasm while awake, but without intercourse. That's a different type from the first one. That's number 3. Number 4, or menstruation. 5, postnatal bleeding. Number 6, or death. If somebody dies, he has to be washed. Right? That's a fard, that's an obligatory. But it's not obligatory on him, of course, because he died already. So it's an obligatory about people who are related to him or people who are around him. That's why we said before the example of funeral services to be a communal obligation. We have to perform these rituals and services for the people who die. The Prophet ﷺ said, when menstruation begins, leave prayer. When its duration ends, wash the blood from you, as he said, ﷺ. And one other version, he said, make the purificatory bath and pray. In a different version of the hadith. If all of this happen, or one of this happens, of course, one of these 6 things, then he must wash his entire body. The Prophet ﷺ said in a hadith, sexual impurity, which we call it janaba in Arabic language, is beneath every hair. So wet the hair and cleanse the skin. إن تحت كل شعرة جنابة. That's a hadith. فاغسلوا الشعر وأنقوا البشر. Bashar means the gel, the skin of your body. You need to make sure. So we talked about the pillars of ghusl, of wudu, the pillars of ablution. He didn't mention explicitly the pillars of ghusl. So ghusl has 2 main integrals, 2 main pillars. Intention, which is again in every single ibadah, and then washing the whole body with water. That's it in short. But the problem is, in detail, how do you define the whole body? You need to make sure that water reaches every single part of your body. I mean, of course, the outward part. Every single part. And that's your responsibility, to make sure the water goes everywhere in your body. And if water wouldn't, that's why rubbing your body is not a pillar, by the way, right? Even in wudu, rubbing the part is not a pillar. In different madhab it is. But in a lot of madhab, in this school of thought, you don't have to rub. So if you just put your hand like this under the water in wudu, you're okay. Right? Other madhabs, no, you have actually to rub your part with your hands, like the Maliki school. But if you just pour water and you make sure water reaches your part, with pouring, if pouring is enough, that's okay. If pouring is not enough, you have to rub it. So if you're taking a shower and some parts of your body, you know the water will not reach there by itself, you have to make sure the water is going there by using your hands or by rubbing it in whatever way that you want. Right? So that's about that. Usually we need that in the ghusl. But in wudu, most likely you really do need to rub the part because you can easily fulfill that. So you need, number 1, water must reach every part of the hair and skin. And be careful with hair and skin, not only the skin, every part of your body. Filth on the body will need to be washed off. So before you take in the shower, if there's any part of filth that is any part of your body, you make sure that you remove it. If there are braids in your hair that prevent water from reaching inside, they have to be undone. Right? If there are any braids in the hair, you have to undo them before taking the shower, because you need to make sure the water goes through all of your hair and reaches the skull itself, for example, if you're talking about the head hair. So he said, then he must wash his entire body with the intention to remove sexual impurity. So the intention of ghusl is different than the intention of wudu. Wudu, he mentioned 5 examples for the intention, and ghusl, it could be this one of the janaba, because again, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, you can actually say just to remove the state of major ritual impurity. So the scholars had these 2 different terms, al-hadath al-asghar, al-hadath al-akbar. Said things that require wudu, we call it minor impurity. I mean ritual impurity, it's not physical impurity, right? The Prophet said, إِنَّ الْمُؤْمِنَ لَا يَنْجُسُ. The believer doesn't get impure. But when we say impurity, we don't mean the body is impure. We mean ritually you're impure, you cannot perform prayer. But your body is okay. You might be very clean, but you're not pure spiritually or ritually. This is what we mean by impurity and purity in this sense. So minor impurity, things that you have to take wudu to lift it, right? Major impurity, things that you have to take a bath to lift it. So that could be your intention. For wudu, that's what you are conscious of. I'm making wudu to lift my minor impurity. When you're taking a bath, I'm making wudu to lift my major impurity. This is what you do when you're taking the shower. If I did more than one reason one things that requires ghusl. Do I have to take a couple, or 3, or 4 showers, or just one would be enough? If these 6 things that we counted, I did 2 of them, for example. Do I have to take 2 showers? Can I have just one intention for both? Do I have aslan to notice both, or just say like I'm left in my major impurity, regardless of the reason behind it? Just one bath will be enough, right? One bath should be enough. Can I combine between the intention of an obligatory shower and a recommended shower? So one of these things happens to me in Friday morning, and I'm gonna take a shower anyway, and they said, you know what, I'm gonna combine the intention of an obligatory bath and a recommended bath for Friday, because it's highly recommended to take a shower on Friday. Actually, the word the Prophet used was, he said wajib, ghusl al-jumu'ati wajibun. But the scholars said, almost all of them, that it's not really obligatory because we have other adilla and other evidences that render it to be something only highly recommended. And there are, when you study in detail ghusl, there are a lot of things that are recommended to take ghusl. Like in some cases in Hajj, for example, when you are in Arafah, when you're entering the Masjid al-Haram, a lot of recommended ghusl that you are recommended to do. The famous one that we usually deal with is the Friday ghusl. So can I combine between an obligatory intention and a recommended intention for shower? Yes, you can. If I have to take a shower and I already broke my wudu, so now I'm taking a shower, do I have to still make a wudu? Or wudu is included in the shower? So now I've done both, major impurity, minor impurity. I'm gonna take a shower, I have to take a shower anyway. So I'm taking a shower, I didn't make wudu. So do I still have to make wudu to left the minor impurity? Or we can consider it to be included in left in the major one? Did you get the question? Again, I broke my wudu, we're gonna now discuss the things that break the wudu. I break my wudu, and then I break my ghusl, basically, like did something that I have to take a shower for. Do I have to do both, or a shower will be enough? Shower will be enough. The question is, do I have to make the intention for both? According to this school, no, you even do not have to. Because already the major includes the minor. Even you didn't think, or you didn't have as part of your intention, I'm actually left in both major and minor. No. If you're left in the major impurity, it's already included. It's good to have the intention, of course. And if you study the recommended things of ghusl, it's already one of the sunan, one of the etiquettes of ghusl is to make wudu while you're making ghusl, by the way. At the beginning. When you study, so we said 2 main pillars, niyyah, washing your whole body. In detail, the description of the showering of the Prophet ﷺ, he would start with basmala, and then he would make wudu first, and then he would start making the ghusl. He would start washing his hair, then he would start washing the right side of the body front, and then the left side front, and then the right side back, and the left side back. He had a detailed way of making the shower. It's not obligatory, but it's a sunnah. If you do that with the intention of following the Prophet ﷺ, you get more thawab when you're taking the shower. But the pillars that you have to make sure is, again, intention, washing all parts of your body. Okay, before talking about things that break the wudu, any questions so far? Yes?
For the Muslim, you have to wash, exactly how far that.
Okay, they say the outward skin of the body. So when we talked about mouth, lips are outward. Inside, no, it is not. So if I didn't rinse my mouth in the ghusl, I'm okay. But my lips are anything that is exposed naturally in the body, right? This is usually what you have to wash. But it gets more it gets more technical, and you have to make sure with the private parts. You have to put a little bit more effort to make sure that they are clean and they are washed. But generally, whatever outward, whatever exposed in your skin and your body, you have to wash. And something inside your ears, no. Inside your mouth, no. Yes.
Right, so you cannot swallow things while we pray, right?
Yes.
So if I have particles in my mouth, I have to rinse it. Food particles. So if I have that, I have to rinse at that point?
This is something related to the prayer, not to the wudu. Because you can make wudu and then eat before you pray.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
So now your problem at that time is you do not swallow something when you're praying, but your wudu is okay.
Yeah. Okay, so it's still not obligatory at that point.
You need to make sure you do not swallow anything while you're praying. That's the point. You do not have to make the wudu again. Okay? I know it sounds very technical, but this is the easy way of understanding it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you easily get confused.
Oh, got it.
Yeah. And we'll talk about prayer and these details. Yeah.
Let's say I make wudu for Dhuhr, I pray Dhuhr, but I'm outside and the Asr time and I pray the Asr. Is it valid or I have to, because the intention was for to pray Dhuhr.
Okay, so in intention, I got it. In intention, you do not have to specify the salah you are praying. In intention, again, you left in the matter of impurity, right? So when you make wudu, now you're able to pray any prayer. Farad, sunnah, multiple prayers, it doesn't matter. Now you can read Quran, open the Quran, carrying the Quran, touching the Quran. All these things that you cannot or you shouldn't be doing while you are breaking your wudu, now you can do them. You do not specify the intention of wudu for a certain thing. So now I want to read Quran, and it's very highly recommended to have wudu before reading Quran. Reading is different than touching. We're gonna talk about this. So you made wudu for this. The wudu intention wouldn't be limited to reading the Quran. If you want to pray now, you don't have to make wudu again. That's why the general intention that you should have is, I'm left in my minor impurity. Okay. Yes.
When you do ghusl, are you only allowed to use water, or are you allowed to use like other products? Can you use shampoo or like?
You're allowed, but you have to use water. If that's the question. You're allowed, of course, use whatever you want, but you have to use water. You cannot make can you make wudu with Pepsi? That's just a question, I'm serious. Can you make wudu with any liquid? With any juice, with any whatever, any kind of liquid? No, it has to be water. Water is a must. So, please, water is a must in both lifting your ritual impurity and, more importantly, in removing the najasa. And we do not care about this enough. So if there is najasa, that's a different thing. It's not really in the wudu. But if something najasa that comes and you carpet and you chair and you need to clean it, you can use chemicals, right? You have to use water. Even if it's clean. You can use chemicals, you removed it. If you didn't use water, you didn't purify it yet. Ritually, you didn't purify it yet. الماء متعين في رفع الحدث وإزالة الخبث. Both. Ma is a must in both. Water is a must in both. In removing ritual impurity, which is wudu and ghusl, and removing filth, which is najasa. There is blood, there is whatever kind of substance of najasa. If it's on anything, you want to clean it, you use chemicals, you use whatever you want. At the end, at the beginning, you have to use water as part of this. If you don't, you haven't purified it yet. Right? Because sometimes we forget about this. Yes.
Can you make the intentional ghusl while you're in the shower? For example, you went to the shower, you didn't have intention of ghusl, but then you just realized that you had to make ghusl during the shower, so you make.
Yeah, it's okay. If you forgot or whatever happened, and then in the middle, have the intention and keep going.
What about for wudu?
What do you mean for wudu?
For example, I'm doing out of, for example, I left the washroom,
Yeah.
but out of muscle memory, I always make wudu. And while I'm doing my elbows, I remember I have to make wudu.
Oh, no, you restart.
Restart.
Yeah.
Okay.
But in ghusl, because it's really almost the same actions.
Yeah.
Unless if there is things that you have to do in your ghusl that you have done before, you will repeat them again.
One more question, but what might be coming soon, but touching private parts there.
This we'll discuss it now. Yeah.
If some kind of najasa leaves a stain and you clean it using chemicals and water, is it still?
You still have to use water.
Yeah, I mean, but if there is a stain after you clean it,
If what?
there is a stain on the rug, for example.
The question is about using water or how to deal with the stain.
Yeah, exactly. Like if there's a stain after I clean it, is it?
Oh, you have to make sure as much as you can to remove the smell and the substance itself and the color. You tried your best and there is still very little thing and you cannot do more than this, that's okay. But you have to make sure as much as you can to remove it.
Wait, you have to use water.
Yes,
Pure water.
pure water.
So you can't just throw in the washing machine and hope.
Washing machine.
No, you're talking about cloth, right? You're talking about cloth.
Whatever, anything, yeah. No, laundry is okay, don't worry. Laundry is okay. Yes.
If a chemical contains water, that can't. So like the thing we clean our hand with, like that was snake. Sanitizers. Yeah.
That's not water, no, that's not water.
Water.
It's part of it, but it's not water anymore. It's altered water.
Okay.
No. You still need to. We're talking only about najasa, by the way.
I'm
Yeah.
not talking about cleaning yourself from wudu.
Yeah. So if there was blood on your hands, for example,
Oh yeah, that's.
and that's not necessarily you, but let's say there's blood on your hands, and you want to wash your hands, you use that whatever chemical, you still need to wash your hands with water. Even if they're clean and it's fine, wash your hands.
Would you have to redo the wudu if there's blood on it?
Oh no, that's a good question. So there is a big. We always get confused about this. Things that break the wudu are different from the najasa. Things that break the wudu, we're gonna discuss them right now, are different from the najasa. Which means, najasa doesn't break the wudu, but you cannot pray with najasa. Example, I just made wudu, and before I started my prayer, whatever the reason was, there was like a couple of spots of blood that came on my hands. What?
Clothing too, let's say.
What?
Clothing too.
Or clothing, whatever. What do I have to do? Wudu is fine, but remove the najasa.
Change your clothes.
That's a life shock, right?
Like at
So-
times because I'm at work, yeah, I don't have extra clothes and I get body fluid on my clothes.
If you know that happens a lot in work, you need to have a certain dress for the prayer. You need to make sure that you have that.
Work on it.
Exactly. You need to make sure that happens. You need to make sure that you have something you pray in. What?
I would have my own wardrobe.
Okay, if you wear certain clothes for your work at the time of prayer, you can take it off and wear something and you pray. I don't think it's that hard, right?
Also wearing scrubs.
If there are detailed scenarios, we can discuss it later. But generally you have to make sure that the clothes are clean. Sorry. Okay, so again, something, a najasa substance comes on your body, comes on your clothes, for example, you remove them. You don't have to make wudu again. There are two different points. Are we clear? Okay, yes. Excuse me, sisters, please. Yeah. And you're still bleeding, okay. It's still bleeding? You need to, okay, so number one, you need to make sure that you remove as much blood as you can and you clean it and then you put the band-aid. If it's still bleeding in the band-aid and you know you cannot do more about this, that's okay. But you have to make sure before you put the band-aid that you clean it. And usually that's what happens, I think. Yeah. Okay. If it's okay to remove it and to clean it before you pray, and that's okay, I mean medically, you have to do that yet. Again, so two different scenarios. That's the best we can do. This, the doctor can decide on this, but this is the best we can do. And we just try to remove all the blood. We tried to purify the wound as much as we could. Then we covered it. And there is still bleeding a little bit. It's okay. And he said, you cannot just take it off now. That's okay, because it's a big wound or whatever the reason. But it's just a small thing. I know it's bleeding and I can take it off, clean it, and they put another band-aid, you have to do that. If you can, take it off and put another one in. Okay? Those are two different scenarios. Yes?
So if your hand is broken, so you have some bandage or something like that, so you can have to wash your hand or your leg.
Yes. You wipe over them. There are other details, but generally you wipe over them. Yes. Last question, and then we continue the things that break the wudu. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We're gonna discuss this right now. Okay. Right. Ablution invalidators, nawaqid al-wudu, and that's very important. So he's gonna count 4 things that break the wudu. 2 of them, consensus. All the scholars agreed on this. 2 of them are problematic to us and are a matter of disagreement among the scholars. So the first one, he said, وَيَنْقُضُ الْوُضُوءَ الْخَارِجُ مِنْ أَحَدِ السَّبِيلَيْنِ الْقُبُلِ أَوْ الدُّبُرِ عَلَى مَكَانٍ. He said ablution is invalidated by anything exiting from either of the 2 waste passages, the front or the back, whatever it may be. Anything that comes out of these 2 things invalidates the wudu. The Prophet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in Surah An-Nisa, أَوْ جَاءَ أَحَدٌ مِّنْكُم مِّنَ الْغَائِطِ, or one of you cometh from latrine, which is the place. The ayah is really beautiful because the ayah is very polite. The ayah uses the place that you do this in instead of describing the actual thing that comes out. الغائط ومكان قضاء الحاجة. We call it, it's a sort of metaphor that you use the place to express about the thing that happens in that place. مجاز علاقته المكانية, they call it that in rhetoric. The waste passages includes the private parts of a man or a woman, the 2 private parts of each one of them. Urethra, vagina, and the anus, that for men and women. Ablution is invalidated when something exits from one of them, whether the substance is a solid thing or a liquid. It doesn't matter. Solid like feces, worms, kidney stones, even babies. Sorry about the context, but whatever comes out from the body. Or liquid like urine, blood, or anything. Or gaseous. Also, all these things, anything that comes out from the body, from the 2 private parts of the body, it invalidates the wudu. He said one exception to this is sperm. Why? Because it actually necessitates the ghusl. It's not because you're okay, you can pray when you do that, but that means because wudu is not going to be enough. You need to take a shower. That's why they didn't count it here. They count it with taking a shower. This one, consensus. Nobody debates that. Anything that comes out from the 2 waste passages, according to all the scholars, all the schools of thought, you have to make wudu. Second thing, he said, وَيَنْقُضُ الْوُضُوءَ زَوَالُ الْعَقْلِ بِنَوْمٍ أَوْ غَيْرِهِ إِلَّا نَوْمَ مُمَكِّنٍ مَقْعَدَتَهُ مِنَ الْأَرْضِ. ablution is invalidated by loss of consciousness through sleep or other means, except for the sleep of someone whose buttocks are firmly seated on the ground. Okay, that's also according to a consensus of the scholars, the first part, that it's invalidated by loss of consciousness through sleep or other means. Other means like sickness. People lost the consciousness because of a sickness or any health problems, or intoxication, regardless of the reason he got intoxicated, right? So if somebody smokes, somebody drinks wine, for example, and then he basically loses his consciousness or he gets high, basically, that means he invalidates his wudu. And when we give that example, we're not saying that smoking is halal or drinking is halal, right? Two different things. You need to have that technical mind when you study fiqh. Because you find that examples in the books. You said if somebody is drunk, his wudu is lost. Okay, but is drinking is not halal? That's two different things, right? Because, okay, he's drinking, he's really caring about prayer. Yeah, it's okay, right? Somebody is smoking and he still wants to pray. It's okay. His prayer is okay. His prayer is inshallah going to be accepted. He's still sinful, so making a major problem. But these things are different, right? And by the way, when you read hadith that whoever does that, his prayer is not going to be accepted, that doesn't mean he shouldn't be praying. That means his thawab, he's wasting his reward, but he still has to pray. Right? There is this hadith about certain actions, when certain sins, I mean, when you do them, said your prayer wouldn't be accepted. That doesn't mean, okay, so I'm not going to pray. No, you still have to pray 5 times a day. There is nothing that would actually hinder you from praying, even the sins. But even if it abolishes your thawab, as the Prophet ﷺ said, you still have to pray. So losing the mind by any means would invalidate your wudu. When we say sleep, we're talking about deep sleep, right? If you dozed off for a couple minutes, you were not really asleep, no, you still have your wudu. Okay, what is the fine line between a deep sleep and just some kind of dozing off?
When you doze off, you understand, you feel, you know what you're doing, mostly. Like if anything happens within those 2 minutes, you're still aware.
You know partially what you're doing. He mentioned here in that paragraph a very nice example. He said, but it doesn't include light dozing where you can hear voices around you but not make out what they are saying. You know, sometimes before you sleep, you can recognize people are speaking around you, but you do not really pick on what they're saying, right? You're not asleep yet. If you're in that case and then you wake up or you actually like you get refreshed again, your wudu is still okay. A sign of a real deep sleep if you see a dream. You don't have to see a dream for your wudu to be broken, but I'm saying it's a sign of a deep sleep, right? If you completely lose your consciousness and you were not aware of anything that is happening around you, now your wudu is actually broken. The only exception is that what he mentioned, if you are firmly seated on something, and even if you slept and you had deep sleep, your wudu is still okay. The Sahaba of the Prophet ﷺ used to be, the Prophet sometimes he would delay the Isha time. He would be in the house, he would walk in the mosque at the time of Iqamah. So he would delay coming out a little bit for whatever reason. So Sahaba are waiting for the Prophet ﷺ. Sometimes he would sleep because the Isha is late. So they would be sitting down in the mosque and they would sleep, and they would have deep sleep, as the companion, one of the hadith actually described. Then when the Prophet walks in, they would wake up and join him in the prayer without making wudu again. Why? Because they were firmly seated when they were sitting. That includes chairs. So whatever, if any of you usually sleeps in the lecture and he wants to join us in the prayer after we're done, it's okay. You still can join us in the prayer. You don't have to make wudu again. But it's a haram to sleep in the lecture. That's a different point. He mentioned here these examples: bus seats, car seats, airplane seats. These things are actually examples for being firm surfaces that you can, if you sleep and you're sitting in the car, you're okay. But you're sitting. If you lie down in the car, no. Right? Even if for a couple minutes. If you slept even for the shortest time, khalas, it's done. So I just took a nap on the couch. No, khalas, it's already, you lost your wudu. If you slept 2 minutes and you lie down, your wudu is broken. If you slept a few hours and you're sitting all the time, your wudu is okay. The problem is sometimes I'm not sure if maybe I lie down in the middle and then I got back to my sitting position, right? If you are in doubt, I'm not sure, make wudu again. But if you're sure that I didn't move, right? Because I'm in an airplane, for example, I slept for a few hours and people are like right next to me, right and left. It's very hard for me to just lie down, right? even if on the shoulder of someone who's next to you, but you're still basically firmly seated. For a couple, 3 hours, it's okay. Your wudu actually is still okay. So these two things are kind of agreement among the scholars. The exception of the person who's firmly seated is a little bit in disagreement, but the general idea of losing consciousness is something of consensus among the scholars. Then he said, and this one is a matter of disagreement, وينقض الوضوء مس قبل أو دبر آدمي منه أو من غيره ببطن الكف وبطون الأصابع كبيرا كان أو صغيرا ولو ولده ميتا. Said ablution is invalidated by touching the genitals or anus of a human, touching the private parts of a human. The Prophet ﷺ said, whoever touches his genitals is to perform ablution. That's a hadith. He also said, if a woman touches her genitals, is she to make ablution? She is to make ablution, ﷺ. And when they talk about touching the anus, is considered actually a kind of an analogy to the touching the other private parts. Whether it's your own part or someone else's part. And the answer is the question of the sisters. If you're changing diapers for a baby, for example, and you touch his parts without a gloves, for example, if you just with your own skin, if you touch a private part of any person, that invalidates your wudu. The Prophet ﷺ commanded ablution for anyone who touched the privates without restricting it to one's own. That's another version of this hadith. Okay, any touching? No. It has to be with the palm of the hand or the bottom side of the fingers. So with this part of the hands or the bottom side of the finger. If you touch from the other side, no, it doesn't invalidate. If you touch with your arms, no, it doesn't invalidate. So this is the only area that actually invalidates this part. If you touch a private part, yours or anyone else, with this part, that invalidates your wudu. You get it? That invalidates your wudu. But any other parts, no, it doesn't actually invalidate your wudu. The Prophet ﷺ said in a hadith, if one of you touches his genitals with his hand without there being any cover between them nor a barrier, he is to make ablution. إذا أفضى أحدكم بيده إلى ذكره ليس دونها ستر فقد وجب عليه الوضوء. The reason they restricted it to the palms, because the word أفضى, Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah, he said the meaning of this word of أفضى in Arabic language, meaning using the palm of your hands in touching, not any general kind of touching. Whether an adult or a child, it doesn't matter, the person you're touching. Even a deceased person, you're not allowed to touch this person. That's haram. Even if you're washing his body, you're not allowed to touch him without a cover. And you're not allowed to see his aura. There's different rulings regarding washing the deceased body, but we're talking about if it happens for any reason. That invalidates your wudu. It doesn't matter, a person is alive, a person is dead, a person is old, a person is young, it's a child, it doesn't matter. Any age and anything. People consider the school of thought, Imam Shafi'i, to be a little bit strict on this. Because some other scholars said, you know what, if you do that with a shahwa, you're actually kind of desiring this, yes, that invalidates your wudu. If not, it's okay. Some other madhab said that. But according to Imam Shafi'i, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter your intention. Once that happens, you need to make wudu again. And the last thing that invalidates the wudu, he said, وَيَنْقُضُ الْوُضُوءَ الْتِقَاءُ بَشَرَتَيْ رَجُلٍ وَامْرَأَةٍ كَبِيرَيْنِ أَجْنَبِيَّيْنِ بِلَا حَائِلٍ إِلَّا ظُفْرًا أَوْ شَعْرًا أَوْ سِنًّا فَلَا يَنْقُضُ الْوُضُوء. He said ablution is invalidated by skin contact between an adult male and female who are unrelated and not permanently unmarriageable kin without a barrier, unless it is with a fingernail, hair, or tooth, as this does not invalidate ablution. Any kind of skin contact between an adult male and female that would invalidate the wudu. Any male and female, no. Someone who is marriageable. If she is from the maharim, from the unmarriageable kin, that's okay, right? So to handshaking or touching mothers, sisters, anybody who we're not allowed to marry, that's okay. That doesn't invalidate the wudu, right? But touching any woman that is, it goes both ways, like for the woman and for the man, of course, who is marriageable, that invalidates the wudu. Okay, a wife, is it marriageable or not? You're already married, right?
No, he is. Yeah.
Every time we teach this class, usually people get confused about this. People get confused about two things. Okay, people get confused about two things. Number one, they think his wife, a person or a woman or her husband, is included in the unmarriageable. It's like, okay, sister, mom, daughter, and my wife. No. Wife, no, because she's marriageable to you, right? This is the first confusion. The second confusion, again, people think that things break the wudu they're not necessarily bad. They're not necessarily haram. Someone once asked, he said, like, I cannot touch my wife? I said, no, you can touch her, but that invalidates the wudu. It's two different things, right? When you say, these things are not haram, these things are not bad. These things that you cannot pray without making wudu again. Do you get the point? Okay, the reason they said this invalidates the wudu is the ayah in Surah An-Nisa. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَوْ لَامَسْتُمُ النِّسَاء. When he was counting the things that break the wudu, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, أو جاء أحد منكم من الغائط أو لامستم النساء فلم تجدوا ماء فتيمموا صعيدا طيبا. He was counting the things that break the wudu, and then he talked about the alternative tahara, which is tayammum, which is using dust to make your tayammum. He said, or one of you cometh from the closet or from the place of qada al-haja, using the washroom, or you have had a contact with women and you find no water, then go to the clean high ground, which is an expression about tayammum. That's this different thing. So he said, أَوْ لَامَسْتُمْ, or touching woman. And of course, he's not talking about touching the unmarriageable ones, because we understood that from the Prophet ﷺ. Is this a matter of consensus? No. But according to this school, and again, if you watch the lecture of last course, you understand these differences. According to other schools, there's no problem. Some schools said, okay, yeah, if you touch another woman with the intention of a desire, yes, that breaks. If not, it's okay. And that's according to some other schools of thought. But Imam Shafi'i, rahimahullah, he didn't consider that as a condition in both, in private parts and in between adult male and female. And of course, in this last one, he's talking about adults. If you're touching like a young girl or young boy, this doesn't invalidate the wudu. It's about adults, males and females. So these last two things that break the wudu, those are a matter of disagreement among the scholars. I know a lot of people who actually, on purpose, they didn't choose to study Shafi'i madhab because of this last one. Because they said our life turned out to be a nightmare. So I know brothers who are following the Shafi'i madhab and their wives are not. And if his wife is mad at him, she would wait until he makes the wudu and she goes and touches him. Sometimes he's sometimes wallah, he told him, sometimes I'm by the door, I'm going to the mosque, it's just a couple minutes before the iqamah time, I need to get to the mosque. He comes and just touches me. They go make wudu again. So I got people, they said, you know what, I want to convert, I cannot do this.
The confusion is in the part that he said somebody you can marry. So somebody you already married. So
Potentially or actually, it doesn't matter. Marriageable means you're already married or you can marry.
yeah, exactly. But it's different. The relationship between you and your wife is different than between you and your mother.
Of course.
Yeah,
The concept is still related to shahwa though. Because the general concept is shahwa. But Imam Shafi'i says whether the shahwa happens or not doesn't matter. But there is a potential shahwa. That's the concept, of course. That's why if you notice, he said skin contact. If you touch the hair, that's not a skin contact. Touching the hair is not a skin contact. Sisters, please. Touching the hair, for example, is not a skin contact. Touching with a beard is not a skin contact. Touching the clothes is not a skin contact. It's about skin to skin. Skin contact between both. Not the hair, he already exempted some of these things. Okay, last thing we conclude with and take the questions and conclude inshallah. There are things, this is very important, he didn't mention it here. There are things that you cannot do when you are in the state of minor ritual impurity. And there are things that you cannot do when you are in the state of major ritual impurity. First, minor ritual impurity, which is things that invalidate the wudu. If your wudu is broken, what are the things that you cannot do? Number one, prayer, of course. Number two, reading Quran. Touching Quran. Which Quran? A mushaf. So if a book has some verses or some chapters, it's not a real mushaf. Is it considered to be a mushaf? Okay, a phone app. Any electronic device that has the Quran, can you touch it and you don't have wudu? Yes. So talk about the actual mushaf. The actual print copy of the mushaf, that's the thing that you cannot touch. You can read Quran at any time. Of course, unless major impurity, we're going to talk about this. But if you broke your wudu, you still can read Quran. Mushaf is open and you read it without touching, it's okay. But you do not touch the mushaf if you do not have your wudu. Okay, you know sajdat al-tilawa, right? Everybody knows sajdat al-tilawa? When you certain ayat in the Quran, when you read or listen to, you are recommended to make two sajdas, or one sajda, for this ayah. فَاسْجُدُوا لِلَّهِ وَعْبُدُوا, for example, and then you make that sajda. Do you have to have wudu for this?
No.
Why no? Why do you say no? Is it prayer or considered to be prayer or not? You know sajdat al-shukr? You make sajda just to thank Allah for something? You have to have wudu for this?
The soccer players do it.
Like soccer players, for example. So what I was going to give that example. Yeah. So do we deal with it as prayer or not? Because what Mo Salah is doing, for example, is a problem. Because we're not sure if he has wudu. And his awra is not really well covered. So we're not sure if the sujood is right. And we're not sure if he's facing the qibla or not. That's not the problem. He just do it whatever towards the other team. Right? We don't know how if he checks the qibla before he starts. So, and do you have to face the qibla in sujood al-shukr when you thank Allah for the sajda? You're pretty confident, mashallah. I don't know how to get this confidence. No. Okay. So, yani, be ready to be shocked. So, all these things are yes, not no. Sujood al-tilawa, we consider it as salah. And sujood al-shukr, we consider it as salah. In shukr, there is some ikhtilaf. Tilawa, no. The four schools of thought, the four madhahib, you consider sujood al-tilawa to be as prayer in terms of you have to have wudu. You have to face the qibla. Right? For sujood al-tilawa. That's the four schools of thought. Maybe some other opinions outside the four schools of thought, but the majority of the scholars said, which the four schools of thought are like over 90% of the scholars, they said you have to have wudu for sujood al-tilawa. Sajdat al-shukr, if you thank Allah by sajda, according to the Shafi'i school at least, you still have to have wudu, you still have to face qibla, do everything you do for the prayer, for thanking Allah. So Mo Salah better follow other madhab if he doesn't like madhab al-Shafi'i. So we mentioned salah, you cannot do while you don't have wudu. Sajdat al-tilawa, sajdat al-shukr, tawaf. When you go to Mecca, inshallah, when you make tawaf, you cannot make tawaf and you do not have wudu. You have to have wudu. The Prophet ﷺ said, "At-tawafu salah." Tawaf is like salah. إلا أن الله أحل فيه الكلام. Except that you can speak or talk to someone when you're making tawaf and touching the mushaf. That's the minor impurity. Last thing, the major impurity. What are the things that we cannot do? All these things plus a couple other things. So all what we mentioned, salah, tawaf, sajid tilawa, sajid shukr, touching the mushaf, all these things, if you have major impurity, of course you cannot do them. And you add two main things. Reciting Quran. Here, even reading the Quran, you cannot do when you are in major impurity. And one more thing. Question or you know the answer?
No, like, you can't go inside the masjid.
Yes, you cannot go inside the masjid if you are in major impurity. Jazakallah khair. These two things. But just for the sisters to know, so there is a very common question about our sisters when they are in the menses or in the period. Can they read Quran or not? Some other opinions, like in the Maliki school, they permit that. And sometimes it's a necessity, or not even necessity, but sometimes it's a homework of Quran. She's a Quran teacher. She's teaching in Islamic school, whatever the reason is, and she wants to read Quran. Even if there is no reason, according to the Maliki school, she can read Quran. She cannot touch the mushaf. That's a consensus. You cannot touch the mushaf when you are in a major state of impurity. A major impurity, I mean. You cannot touch the mushaf by all the scholars. If you are in a janaba, you cannot touch the mushaf, you cannot read the Quran. All consensus. The only exception of these 6 things that count in the major impurity is that only for women, only for the reason or the excuse of menses, she can read the Quran, but she cannot touch the mushaf. According to other madhab. According to our madhab here, no. Even reading the Quran, she's not allowed to read the Quran during that time. But usually you get that question, so maybe, and it's okay to follow the other opinion. There is no problem. And please try to watch the halaqah again and understand how to follow different opinions. That's very important. Because we're gonna get a lot of questions. Okay, I'm not really comfortable with the touching the marriageable woman or touching private parts. Whatever thing that you don't see really very feasible or practical to you, you need to study and understand how can I follow other madhab without falling in wrong, like complicated scenarios. So you need to watch this. Yes. Fast for menses, no. For any other one, yes. Somebody is in janaba, for example, for the sexual impurity, and then he's in Ramadan. Then he wakes up, and it's a fasting day. He can fast. It's okay. Doesn't invalidate the wudu. It doesn't invalidate the fasting. But of course for menses, the woman is exempted from fasting. Yes. Yes. If you lie down or even leaning on something, yes, that breaks the wudu. No. Okay, so leaning or lying means your lower part of the body is moving, basically. It's about the lower part of the body, it's not about the upper part. So if you do like that, or we do like that, but you're still firmly seated, that's okay. But if you go side, that means your lower part would move, so that would break the wudu. By the way, the wisdom behind this is the possibility of passing something. Al-aynu wika'u sah, as the Prophet ﷺ said. That if you are asleep and you're sitting like this, it's a very low chance that something will pass. But if you're lying down, that's a very high possibility. It still might not happen, but you never know, so you make wudu.
سؤال ثاني عن نقض الوضوء بين الزوج والزوجة للإمام الشافعي. هلا الإمام الشافعي لو صلى وراء شخص بينزل من أنف دم يقبل الصلاة. هو حكى إنه صلي وراء شخص نازل من أنف دم.
No,
بالعكس.
No, not شخص نزل منه دم. نزل منه دم ولم يتوضأ. But not during the prayer. Because dam is najasa, that's إجماع.
لا هو حكى إذا الإمام نازل من أنف دم وبتصلي وراء ولا لا حكى بتصلي.
نزل in the prayer?
إيه بالصلاة نزل.
No. It means if that happens before I didn't make wudu, or in the prayer and he cleaned it.
عفوا مو بالصلاة يعني.
Yeah, yes.
ونظفه.
No, it's the opposite because bleeding in the Shafi'i madhab doesn't break the wudu. Those are not the only 4 things that break the wudu, by the way. So in other madhabs, you'll find bleeding breaks the wudu. This madhab, no. If you bleed, it's okay. Again, you remove the blood, but you don't have to make wudu again.
هذا مو نفس الشيء بين إذا الزوج إمام الشافعي والزوجة مثلا إمام حنفي لمسها.
I don't understand.
يعني نفس الفكرة إنه لو لمسها ما بينتقض وضوءه، نفس الشيء هو بيصلي لو صلى وراء شخص بينزل كان لازم ينفذ دم ما بينتقض صلاته. يعني نفس الفكرة.
I didn't get it.
He's trying to say that if somebody who touched his spouse,
Okay.
right, and then they leave the salah.
Okay.
He's comparing it. He's comparing it to the situation.
Yeah, you're okay. You're okay with the imam. No problem about the imam.
Yeah.
If the imam is following another sound opinion, you're okay. You didn't even have to investigate or to ask. You know that it's an imam who knows what he's doing. You just follow him. You have your own madhab that you follow, and you did your tahara according to, and then you lead that. You follow the imam. It's okay. So I mean, if you know the imam has already done something that you believe it's one of the things that breaks the wudu, but you know according to another madhab it doesn't, it's okay. That's the answer. Yes.
I have 2 questions. One is, when you cleaning the baby, do you use wipes? You know, your baby wipes?
Yes. No, if you didn't touch anything, no. So for the touching thing, for whatever private parts or other opposite gender, if with a barrier, with gloves, with whatever, that doesn't break the wudu.
The other one, like my husband is disabled, so when I help him, do I bring?
Sorry, I didn't hear you. Sorry.
My husband is disabled,
So when she's happy,
Mm-hmm.
my husband, yeah, I'm helping him things, studies or whatever.
In that case, he should follow another opinion, and his wudu will be okay. That's the only way that he can make wudu. If that's the only way he can make wudu, he should follow another opinion on this, because that will be easier for him. We cannot tell him you have to follow this madhab because he's really in a tough situation.
What about for me, if I'm helping him?
she has
Same thing, whatever you follow. If you follow this opinion, but just let me explain to her. Okay, let me explain to her. Thank you. So if you follow that madhab that you know that breaks the wudu, after you're done and you need to pray, go make wudu again. Okay? Any more questions? Okay, that's perfect. We actually finished on time. Okay, next time please read these parts that we explained and read the commentaries of the translator, and then read the next chapter of Salah. So read the chapter of Salah before we explain it next time. That would make it easier for you, inshallah. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum.